It started with a sound from nowhere, a soft, rhythmic thump, 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 where no floorboard should be. And then, the chilling drag of wood on something rough, just above my head. My house was a single-story ranch, a cozy, unassuming place on Willow Creek Lane, in a quiet suburb just outside of Columbus, Ohio. I'd spent years dreaming of a place without shared walls, no basement, no attic, just a simple crawl space underneath, and a flat, insulated roof above. I bought it for the quiet, the surprisingly large backyard, a welcome escape from years of apartment living where every creak and groan felt like an invasion. Here, I honestly expected peace. Absolute quiet. That peace lasted exactly 3 weeks. It began subtly, around 2 a.m., the witching hour, as they say. A faint thump, 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 from what sounded like directly above my bedroom. My first thought, naturally, was an animal. A raccoon, maybe, or a squirrel scampering on the roof. I tried to ignore it, pulled the covers tighter, even muttered to myself to just go back to sleep. But then came the second sound. A slow, heavy scrape, drag, scrape, like a substantial piece of wood being pulled across a rough surface. It was methodical, deliberate. My mind immediately conjured an image. A ladder. A long wooden ladder. And that's when the first real chill hit me. Because there was nowhere for a ladder to be dragged on my roof without me hearing it clearly from the outside, and certainly not inside the house. I tried to tell myself it was the house settling or wind, but it felt wrong. The next morning, I did a full perimeter check. I probably looked ridiculous, honestly, walking around like some detective in a low-budget horror movie. Nothing. No claw marks on the siding, no disturbed shingles, no signs of forced entry to the crawl space. My roof was intact, not a single branch hanging over it. I even took the embarrassing step of asking my immediate neighbors, the Millers next door, if they'd heard anything unusual. They just looked at me with polite confusion, shaking their heads. I probably came off as a little unhinged, but the sounds, however, persisted. Every night, without fail, between 2 and 3 a.m., it became this awful, inescapable routine. Sometimes it started from above, a slow, heavy trek, then the ladder drag. Other times, it would begin with a muffled thud, thud, thud from directly under my floorboards, followed by that same agonizing scrape, drag, scrape. It always sounded like a single heavy ladder, and it always sounded like it was moving away from me, towards some unseen destination at the far ends of the house, where the sounds would eventually fade into silence, leaving me with a pounding heart and a chilling sense of dread that started to feel like a second skin. I tried everything to rationalize it. I mean, you have to, right? Thermal expansion? Pipes rattling? The house settling after all these years? But the distinct rhythm of footsteps, the unmistakable drag of wood, these weren't just random creaks. They were sounds of intent. And that thought, that's what really kept me awake. One night, the fear truly set in. I was in the living room, trying to relax, trying to pretend everything was normal. The sounds started above, moving towards the kitchen wall, then silence. A few minutes later, The faint thump-thump-thud started directly under my feet, moving from the kitchen towards the back bedrooms. That's when it clicked. It was as if whatever was making the noise had descended from the ceiling, moved through the ground floor, and was now underneath my house. And the ladder was following it. My breath caught in my throat. I remember just standing there, absolutely paralyzed by the thought, straining my ears until they ached. The footsteps moved slowly under my bedroom. Then the dragging started again, fading towards the back of the house. It became horrifyingly, undeniably clear. These weren't random sounds. There was a path, a circuit. Something was moving through an invisible vertical space, using an unseen ladder, perpetually crossing through my home, from above to below, or below to above, night after night. And I was living right in the middle of it. I started sleeping with lights on. It sounds childish, I know, but anything to push back against the darkness it seemed to bring. Then I moved my mattress into the living room, thinking the open space would provide some comfort. It didn't. The sounds still followed their circuit, indifferent to my location. I could lie there, trembling, and pinpoint the exact moment the ladder would be dragged from under the kitchen to under the master bedroom. It was terrifyingly precise, like a macabre, invisible clockwork. The psychological toll was immense. I became paranoid. Days felt like a hazy blur, just marking time until 2 a.m. again. I'd walk into the local Target for groceries and feel eyes on me, even though I knew it was just my own mind playing tricks. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I could hear a faint creak from where the ladder would be placed, even during the day. I started seeing things in my peripheral vision, shadows stretching too long, corners of rooms that seemed darker than they should be. My cozy home had become a stage for an impossible ritual, and I was the unwilling, horrified audience. Then, about 6 months into this nightmare, the pattern changed. One night, the sounds returned, but something was profoundly different. The footsteps from above began, but they weren't moving. They were just there, above my bedroom. And then the unmistakable sound of that wooden ladder being dragged into place directly above me. My heart actually stopped for a second, I swear. It was followed by a soft, almost imperceptible scrape that seemed to vibrate through my pillow. And then, a single, deliberate creak, like a heavy weight pressing down on an old rung. And then, silence. A silence that has lasted ever since. I still live in that house. I can't bring myself to sell it, to pass this impossible burden on to someone else. Every night, between 2 and 3 a.m., the routine continues. The footsteps above my bedroom, the ladder being dragged into position, and the single, sustained creak. I never hear the descent, never hear it move away. It's just there, and I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what's waiting in the impossible space above me, and what precisely it uses that ladder for. And sometimes, I wonder if it's waiting for me.